don't think there's anyone in the world that can reasonably argue that Call of Duty isn't the biggest shooter franchise on the market right now. Its solid foundation of twitch-based combat, powerful killstreak rewards, and variety of weapons makes it a go-to series for competitive FPS players. However, as the years have gone by, the annualized franchise has begun to show its age, and challengers such as Battlefield have really begun to offer alternatives for those looking for a different experience. Titanfall, the first product from the newly formed Respawn Entertainment, hopes to fit that bill. Born from a dispute with publisher Activision over bonus payouts after the release of Modern Warfare 2, Respawn, created by Infinity Ward founders Jason West and Vincent Paula, alongside a quarter of the core Infinity Ward team, have stuck to their roots in creating a Twitch-based FPS while bringing combat out of the modern setting and into a sci-fi, almost Firefly-esque future Battlefield. With Call of Duty behind them, and ironically their biggest competitor, does Titanfall have what it takes to change the way we think about the competitive shooter? Centuries after humanity has spread to the stars, our species has found itself settling on two sets of planets. The core systems, the first life-bearing bodies we found, and the frontier, a newer set of systems full of untapped resources they were still attempting to colonize. Between the two lines of vast expanse of space where nothing exists. For the core systems, the Interstellar Manufacturing Corporation, a commercial empire that controls the vast majority of the shipping lanes and planetary contracts, rules the frontier, imposing their will as they see fit and legally backing up their claims with armed incursions. Opposed to them are the militia, a mishmash of homesteads, colonies, mercenaries, and more that aim to kick the IMC out of the frontier. Titanfall stands as the multiplayer-only game from the outset, though the setup for the game's universe that you just heard is still applicable thanks to the inclusion of campaign multiplayer. As one of the primary gameplay settings, campaign multiplayer takes you through a narrative-focused playthrough of a series of 9 maps from both the militia and IMC perspectives. Each map begins with a scripted intro sequence for which you are introduced to the battlefield you are about to engage the enemy in, as well as multiple in-game events that occur at set moments as the match progresses. Sadly, apart from the intro cutscenes, very little of the game makes an effort to draw you into the story, let alone make you feel for the characters on either side of the conflict. We're not given a proper introduction to pretty much anyone, nor do you receive any in-game information as to why this war is happening. Respawn has clearly put a lot of time and effort into this game over its 3-year development stretch, but doesn't appear as if they've made that strong an effort in making the universe one that the player should care about. At no point through either side of the campaign did I feel any emotions for the game's characters, and that's strange to me, considering that Respawn clearly wants to build a franchise. What's even stranger is just how the campaign for the game is formatted in terms of gameplay. Apart from playing only 2 of the 5 different gameplay modes available at launch, the win-loss conditions of each map have almost no impact on the outcome of the narrative, save for how the characters address the results of the battle. Instead, the storyline never changes or adapts to what the players accomplished, with, spoiler alert, the good guys winning and the bad guys ending up on the run. This could have been an excellent opportunity for Respawn to introduce gameplay elements such as branching narrative design, story-focused sub-mission objectives, and progressively changing mission conditions. This can, of course, be chalked up to a small development team with a finite amount of resources at their disposal, but even so, this feels like a lost opportunity. Despite the road not taken with the overall design and the narrative elements, Respawn has stayed true to their origin in creating set-piece moments throughout the match. Both the skybox as well as various places on the map will show off in-game events that, for the most part, are out of the player's control and demonstrate an almost living, breathing battlefield. One such map, for example, can feature an aerial battle between several capital ships, while another features dragons that attack AI grunts. 2 memorable matches include a D-Day-esque Stormy of the Beaches moment as an AI Titan leads you and your troops into battle, while yet another features gigantic, lumbering dinosaurs just outside the walls of your map. Yeah, you heard that right. Titanfall has dinosaurs in it. And that's awesome. All in all though, Titanfall lacks punch in the delivery of their core narrative and universe build-up. The campaign's definitely a fun romp while it lasts, though one would hope that the game's upcoming DLC will address the issues I mentioned just a moment ago. Though Titanfall's attempt at introducing narrative into a multiplayer game ends up being about on par with what Splash Damage's 2011 title Brink did, Titanfall succeeds in the gameplay department in strides. Beyond just the story, the comparison I just mentioned is a necessity when one brings up the game's parkour movement system, and unlike the lackluster attempt Brink brought to the table, Respawn's title is quite the feat. Nay, I say, it's one of the best parts about Titanfall. Built on the same foundation as any other shooter, Titanfall harkens back to the olden days of yore, when Quake and Unreal Tournament were the biggest names in competitive gaming by giving the player a jetpack for which they can, at any time during a jump, induce a double jump that aids both vertically and horizontally. This is combined with the ability to, while in the air, run along walls by simply pushing up against one. Running along a wall yields a faster rate of movement than traveling on foot, which encourages this behavior. This is all well and good, but the real ticket comes when you take notice that the jetpack resets its boost every single time your foot hits a surface. This means that if one is careful, they can chain wall runs together almost indefinitely, so long as they can maintain the necessary momentum to initiate one. The end result is tremendous fun, and while it has some very negative consequences as to your ability to aim your weapon, it will end up being the best Titanfall player's method of choice for getting around the map. The movement system wouldn't be strong, however, unless Respawn emphasized complementary map design, but for the most part, Titanfall's initial offering of 15 maps makes parkour exceptionally satisfying to do. Though not every single one of them does so, the selection at hand does a very nice job of both encouraging extended wall running and parkour thanks to corridors as well as properly placed geometry, while offering large spaces by which Titans can engage in mass combat. Speaking of, the Omega to the wall running system's alpha are the Titans, the titular object of both everybody's desire and bane throughout the entire Titanfall experience. These 20-foot tall mechs are illustriously exciting to utilize at times, and an essential tool for combat throughout the game. Unlike the typical kill streak or power-up that you get in most other Twitch-based shooters, players are given a Titan after a certain amount of time as indicated on their HUD. This timer can be cut down significantly if the player is able to damage or kill enemies, with the most time being cut for those who kill opposing players. This system ensures that even the most novice of players will still earn a Titan at least once throughout the course of a match, something that players in a game like Call of Duty may find trouble with, especially later in the game's life cycle. Skilled players will be able to earn upwards of 4 to 5 Titans during a match, but it is a very fair system and is a most welcome addition to the formula. Titans come in one of 3 different flavors, though you only have access to one of them unless you complete the campaign as both the IMC and the Militia. Titanfall's inclusion of only 3 models to choose from may be a tad disappointing to some, but I find myself questioning what else Respawn could have included outside of support and defense-focused Titans. What isn't disappointing is how a Titan handles, as they work almost exactly like a standard player in the game. Players can utilize melee attacks in addition to weapons fire to whittle down a Titan down to its doomed state, which will cause it to soon explode. Should players decide to stay on foot rather than climb into their Titan, the unit will enter an AI mode in which it will fight on your behalf and either guard one particular spot or follow you around the map. The accuracy of AI is nowhere near as strong as what players can bring to the table though. Despite what one would think, I'm happy to report that Titan on pilot engagements are not one-sided at all, as each side has an equal chance of defeating the other. Pilots can easily outmaneuver a Titan thanks to both the map design as well as the parkour abilities mentioned earlier. Pilots can also engage in the act of, quote, rodeoing, in which they climb on the back of a Titan, tear open a panel, and can deal massive amounts of damage directly without having to take its shield down. All pilots are equipped with a tertiary weapon slot devoted entirely to anti-Titan weaponry, which can really damage or even take down a Titan if the pilot gets the drop on it. I am also glad to report that Titanfall's weapon variety, though lacking in number in comparison to most modern military shooters on the market, each weapon handles great and feels unique. Though you'll mostly run into players utilizing the RC-101 assault rifle, each and every weapon is both fun and interesting, not to mention powerful. One especially unique weapon, the Smart Pistol, can be a bit unwieldy, but can lock onto and fire bullets accurately at multiple targets. It seems that Respawn wants you to learn to appreciate all models of weapons in Titanfall, rather than falling into a crutch, and they've done a fine job of that. Titanfall comes loaded with a standard allotment of gameplay modes, without much of a twist. That's just fine in my opinion. Players can engage in attrition, a point-based take on team deathmatch, hardpoint domination, capture the flag, last Titan standing, in which players fight each other until the last Titan on the opposing team is destroyed, and finally, pilot hunter, which strictly specifies player-only kills. Everything is fine across the board, and the selection of maps that ship with Titanfall work just fine with all variants, though I feel the game could use a bit more variety. One final element that I feel must be mentioned is the game's inclusion of an epilogue to each match. Rather than have the match end once one side meets a victory condition, instead the losing team calls in for extraction via dropship. The losing team must make their way to their dropship and either board or defend it before it evacuates, while the winning team must attempt to stop them from escaping. During this sequence, each player is relegated to only one life, so if they die, they must watch on as a spectator as everything else plays out. It's not a necessary part of any one match, it is really only meant to give the player some pilot bonuses while fulfilling the map narrative aspect of the game, but it's still fun for both sides. Titanfall is a good looking game to be sure. What's surprising though is that Respawn chose to build the game on Source, Valve's engine that stands nearly a decade old at this point, and built well prior to the start of the last generation of consoles. Despite this, the game looks nice, with a nice amount of detail put into texture work, character faces, and particle effects. Surprising for something that arrived on the market when I was just entering college. While it looks good, Titanfall does suffer from some issues. The Xbox One version can suffer from considerable screen tearing at times, unfortunately, but more importantly, the game has trouble with its frame rate. Though Titanfall is designed to run at the full 60 frames per second we come to expect from a Twitch-based shooter, the game struggles at times to maintain it depending on the context of what's going on around the player. Despite this, it doesn't cripple the experience at all, and usually picks back up fairly quickly. In spite of some issues with the visual design, Titanfall sports a rather top-notch sound suite. The game sports a strong soundtrack by Stephen Barton, though it seems that most of the pieces are variations on the core themes of the Militia and IMC. Weapon sound design is very well done, as all the weapons, both pilot and Titan oriented, can easily be identified by their fire signature. The only part that is a bit weak is the voice work, which, for the most part, is fine, but lacks some significant punch, though this can easily be attributed to the game's writing. Titanfall has the mixed pleasure of being one of the biggest releases on Microsoft's new console, as it has to both demonstrate the capabilities of Respawn Entertainment, as well as mark a strong starting point for Microsoft's 2014 lineup and beyond. Though it does have some flaws to its narrative and visual departments, it's an exceptionally fun shooter that stands as a bridge between the classic fast-paced competitive shooters of yore, while containing the solid action and visual presentations of today's bullet fests. Titanfall is a fantastic experience to be had, and deserves the attention of anyone who enjoys playing the virtual soldier. Its rewarding action and unique gameplay elements makes it a challenger for one of the best shooters of 2014.